Hey, what's up? My name is Devin, if you didn't already know, and today we're going to be talking about shooting manual mode on your camera. Let's roll that intro. Now, if you have your own DSLR or own camera, whatever, feel free to follow along because, it could be very useful, or take this video and apply it to your camera afterwards. Now, what I have is a DSLR, digital SLR camera. I'm going to be putting a lens on pretty soon, but most point and shoot cameras and some even smartphones now have manual mode. So that these tips can apply to that as well. So now I'm going to choose a lens because I need to be able to see my settings that I'm choosing. So for this video, I'm going to choose my favorite lens, my 50mm prime lens. Bought it off of a friend for 90 bucks. New, I think this level new cost $125, $135. Alrighty, now that I have the lens on, I'm going to jump into what today's video is all about. We're going to learn the 3 major steps, and I'll talk about a 4th one. But we're going to learn the 3 major ones today that'll help you shoot manual mode and what you're going to be adjusting on your camera to shoot manual mode. So, I'm going to turn the camera on. And the first one we're going to talk about is the ISO or ISO, but it's this setting right here. Right now I'm at 100. So, on my camera, how you change it here is you press this ISO button right here at the top of the D-pad. So I'm going to hit that. This is a very entry-level camera by Canon, so there's not a lot. I've seen cameras that go up to 12,000 ISO, which is insane, and what I have here works just fine. Now, the thing to remember with ISO is that lower is better when it comes to taking a picture or even shooting video, because the higher you get on the ISO, say you go 200, 400, 800, or even higher, like it's going to add more and more noise to it. You're going to get more grain, and it's not going to be as crisp of a picture as if you were at an ISO 100. So that's ISO. I always try to stay around 100, 200. I tried to never go above 400 unless I really, really need to and it's going to help. By then, I'll most likely use my flash on top of the camera here. But anyway, so we'll go ISO 100 for now. We'll keep it there because that's what I like to keep it as. So now that we have that set, we're going to hop right into the next one. The next one is your aperture or your f-stop. That is this number right here. It says f3.5 right now. That's because the last lens I had on was the 18 to 55, and the lowest aperture this goes to is 3.5. Now this specific lens, the reason why it's my favorite is because this aperture can drop down to 1.8. Now that opens the lens up really, really wide. If you've ever heard anybody talk about shooting wide open or opening up the lens as wide as it can go, this is what they're talking about. This is also kind of an inverse operation when working with aperture. The smaller the number, the bigger the opening on the lens. And so that's what you have to remember when you're adjusting that number, that smaller is bigger in this case. The aperture also messes with the depth of field of the lens and your sensor. With the lowest aperture like this, 1.8, I'm going to have a very, very, very shallow depth of field, as if I were to take a picture with the tabletop in focus here. The ground down below or anything behind it would be super blurry and you wouldn't be able to make it out. But if I were able to crank up this aperture all the way to, say, we'll just go 16 for now, because if you saw that on Instagram, this is called the Sunny 16. But anyway, shooting like this, the table in focus and the backdrop would be very, very slightly blurry, if at all. You'd be able to tell what's back there. It'd be decently clear. But back to what I was saying, the Sunny 16, that gives you, if you came from Instagram or if you haven't seen my Instagram post on the Sunny 16, you can view it right here. The Sunny 16, it gives you like a star effect around lights that you're shooting into, and it really, really closes the lens. But we'll drop that aperture back down again. Like I was saying, aperture is mostly personal preference here, because some people like really blurred background and a crisp subject that you're focused on. It depends on how close your subject is, you know, all that stuff. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that goes into it, and you just got to play with your camera and play with your settings to get used to it. Now, I'm not really going to go into depth or like super explain like how to change all the settings, because every camera is different unless you have this specific camera, which is the Canon Rebel T6. So every camera is different. You just have to play with your camera, figure out where everything is. That's how I learned. You just got to spend time with your camera, get to know it, get to know how everything works, and then you'll just go from there. So now we'll jump into the third setting that you'll be adjusting most of the time, and that is your shutter speed. I saved this one for last because once you have your ISO set and your f-stop set, then your shutter speed can be adjusted accordingly, and that's the one that's easiest to change. It's the one you should be changing the most. If you notice, I have this meter that comes in here, and when I press the focus, it's going to come up with the exposure on that, and I'm slightly underexposed. I'm not quite one step down, but so I can drop the shutter speed a little bit, and now we're all the way up at properly exposed for this table, because I have a light on it and it's reflecting, you know, there's a decent amount of light and it's working pretty well. I could take a picture right now and it would be properly exposed, and I'll do that for you right now. Boom, there you go. That's my tabletop. Congratulations. But anyway, so this is really the one that you can adjust the most. And if you notice, when I'm trying to focus on this table, the exposure meter is pretty much right there, but if I were to focus off the table here, now it's way underexposed, it's saying. Probably because not enough light is reaching the area that I'm focusing on. I don't know, I'm not looking through the viewfinder. But it's somewhere over in that corner, and it's saying it's really underexposed, and we'll see how this picture turns out, because sometimes the meter lies, but sometimes it's perfectly correct. So we'll find out. Yeah, see, now that's pretty underexposed. That's just my junk that I have over sitting in the corner. The shutter speed is how long the shutter is open to allow light to come into the lens. Your other two settings, the first one is how sensitive your camera is to the light, to that light coming in. And your aperture is how much light you want to let in during this amount of time. And the higher the shutter speed is, that's where you're going to be shooting with a lot of light, which I'm not down here. I can crank this all the way up to 1/4000th of a second. And if I were to shoot a picture down here, it would probably barely come through, or it'd be all black. So I'm not going to shoot down here with this shutter speed, obviously. But when you're outside, a bright sunny day, you can probably get up to a 1/4000th of a second, especially if you're shooting with an aperture of 1.8. You're letting a lot of light come into that lens. And a higher shutter speed, if you're shooting action photography, nature photography, what have you, it's going to stop motion because it's super quick. It's going to pick up a second, like well, obviously 1/4000th of a second of that motion going on, and it's going to stop it. You're not going to have any blur. Now you can drop it all the way down if you have lower light, like down here, when I just took a picture of the top of this, I was at 1/100th of a second. Now these settings here is probably about right for any interior photography you're gonna do, because I have a light above me with a makeshift softbox on it that is quite honestly resembling a window with daylight right now. It's not as bright, but it gets the job done. And so like interior photography, settings are gonna look similar to this if you have a lens that opens up this wide. Say I go to the aperture of 3.5, which is the lowest on my 18 to 55 millimeter lens. Now if I keep the same shutter speed, this table is not gonna be exposed as well. So you're gonna have to drop that shutter speed. And so we'll focus on this table, and we'll see that it's way below the properly exposed. If I take this picture, it's gonna be near black. So I'm gonna have to drop that shutter speed, and we're gonna have to go way below 1/80th of a second. I'm at 1/15th of a second right now, and that's saying it's properly exposed. Now I don't really pay attention to the meter because I've had time with this camera to figure out that sometimes the meter isn't always correct. But anyway, I'm way below 1/80th of a second, and I say 1/80th even though I was at 1/100th because once you get down that low, you're gonna wanna think about putting it on a tripod, like how I have my camera recording this on. Because no matter what, when you take a picture this low, especially when you get down this low, when you take a picture, you're gonna get a lot of camera shake, even if you think you're holding it perfectly still. So anyway, this camera can drop all the way down to a 30-second exposure before it hits the bulb exposure, which you hold it open for as long as possible. And with this one, I have Wi-Fi function, so I can connect it to my phone and I can open the shutter, walk away for a minute or two, and then close the shutter when I come back, and I don't have to continuously hold this button. When you're sitting there waiting for a picture to expose for 30 seconds, 30 seconds actually takes a lot longer than you would think. So when you're using 30 seconds, like me and my friend, we like to go out at night and we like to shoot pictures of the sky. Sometimes when you leave the shutter open for this long and you have a lens that opens up this wide, you can get a lot of light that comes in that like you can't even see with your own eye, and you can get a lot of awesome color to come in and a bunch of light that you didn't think was there. But anyway, there you have it. Those are the three main settings you'll be adjusting when shooting manual mode. And when shooting manual mode, you want to have one thing set before you start even shooting, which is the fourth setting that I was talking about, that you're going to want to adjust probably just when you get the camera. You may adjust it a few more times if you want to play around with it, which is what I did. And that's your white balance. That's this right here. Now I have mine set on auto white balance, white priority. That's an option my camera has, and I'm really happy that it has it because it's my favorite setting. But you'll see here we have auto white balance, and you have all your settings that you want for changing your white balance manually if you're into that. You have a sunny setting, shade, cloudy, incandescent bulb, which is actually really helpful because sometimes the auto white balance won't pick up the normal incandescent bulbs. So sometimes I'll have to go in and change that if I'm shooting around them. But then you also have fluorescent, your flash, and you also have a custom setting, which I haven't really played with because I really like the auto white balance. It's been doing a really good job so far, but you can go in, you can take bits and pieces from all of these and put it into your own setting if you really want. I don't change that setting much unless I'm playing with color when I'm doing long exposures at nighttime. Those are the three, and the fourth one, but those are the three main things you're going to be adjusting to shoot manual mode. Now, like I said, every camera is different. Some people may have this camera. A lot of people have other cameras. Some people may just have their smartphone and it has a manual ability. If you have a point and shoot camera, I know I've messed with my mom's a little bit. It's pretty tricky on hers, but I can get into manual and I can get the job done. It just takes a little bit longer. I haven't spent as much time with that camera. But anyway, I hope you guys like this video. I hope it's very helpful. And if you feel like I missed anything or want me to cover something else, feel free to leave that in the comments down below. And also, don't forget to like this video if you like this video. And I know I said it earlier, but you can follow me on Instagram right here. Keeping up with my photography content or my personal content if you decide to follow that page as well. And subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. There's going to be a lot more camera tutorials coming out. I hope to continue to spread my knowledge on to everybody else, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.